All right, folks, welcome to the Buckmasters Outdoors Podcast. I got a young man from Cleveland, Mississippi, Case Chacon. Welcome to the podcast, Case. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Over there, you're over in the Delta, aren't you, in Cleveland, Mississippi?
Yes, sir, in the heart of the Delta.
Yeah, well, there's some good hunting over there. I hunted over there 2 years ago, and my dad's good friend used to pitch for the St. Louis Cardinals, was over there. And right there in central Mississippi, it was called Floral, Mississippi, and I used to hunt over there all the time. So, yeah, got some great outdoors over there. So tell me, how old are you, where you go to school, and all that good stuff?
I'm 17. I go to school at Bio Academy in Cleveland, Mississippi, and I'm just like your regular kid. I play sports and love being outside and just having fun.
Well, I always said when you play sports and you go outdoors, it's hard to get in trouble. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly right. Keeps me out of trouble. Keeps me busy.
Exactly. But it's a great education because you're learning everything on both fronts right there, and that's the cool thing.
Right.
Yeah, I'll tell you now, at my age, and I played sports all my life and played some collegiate tennis and some professional tennis, your sports will help you later on in your work life, I promise you. You'll be used to discipline, and that's what it's all about, having a work ethic, discipline, and handling pressure. And that will go all the way with you, all the way through your life. So I wish you all the luck in the world. You going to be a senior this year?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you play football? What'd you say, football, basketball, and baseball?
Football, baseball, and track.
All right. I got you. Okay. All right.
Basketball gets in the way of my hunting.
There you go. Well, I did tennis and basketball, but I didn't let anything get in the middle of my hunting. You know what I'm saying? So, all right. Well, good. Well, that's great to hear all that news. Now, tell me a little bit about your hunting. Who got you hunting?
My dad originally got me hunting just growing up. I was just like any other kid. When I was about 3 or 4, he bought me a BB gun for Christmas, and I started shooting Coke cans with it, and finally I was ready to go to the woods with him, sit there quiet enough, and I watched him hunt, and I always looked up to him. I remember being a kid, just trying to, every footstep, I'd try to put my foot right where his footprint was, just trying to lengthen my stride, trying to be like him on the way to the stand. And just watching him do all the things he's done hunting, it's kind of inspired me. He's done some pretty cool things, and I hope I can take that with me and listen to him and maybe do something like he's done when I get to be his age.
Well, that's cool. My dad, he was all about sports. He didn't hunt, but my grandfather's the one that got me going. And you either get hooked or you don't. And obviously, you've gotten hooked and been bit by the hunting bug.
There's no doubt.
Which weapon do you prefer?
I always shot, growing up. Started out with a 22, then I went to a 243, and by the age of 10, my dad and all his buddies were bow hunters only in the whitetail woods. So I always wanted to be like them, and hearing a kid I just bow hunt or whatever, it's like that's a challenge. And so at the age of 10, I picked it up, and I shot my first deer at the bow. I shot a doe opening day with my bow, and ever since then I was hooked, and I just wanted to keep doing it. And I went for a spell there at the age of 10 for a year or so. I didn't kill a deer, but every time I got close to one, it felt more rewarding. It's just something about it. And so I've been bow hunting since, but that's not to say I don't. My brother, he hunts with a rifle. Everyone else does, and there's nothing wrong with that. I like to see how close I can get to him personally.
Well, there's a lot to that, and like I said, I love to bow hunt, but by gosh, when I like to squeeze that trigger too every now and then. But you are right; it is two completely different sports because your scouting has to be so much more condensed in the bow hunting, in the wind and everything with your scent. It's just tremendously difficult to do that with a bow. And whether you shoot a doe or a buck, it doesn't matter. Anything that you shoot with a bow and arrow, because you've got to put it in just a certain spot you know what I'm saying, the double long, whatever, to make that, make that harvest. That's a cool sport in itself.
Absolutely. I've always said a, if a rifle hunter or even a bow hunter who takes a rifle with them, if they would hunt like they're bow hunting with the rifle, there would be big deer killed in Mississippi if every rifle hunter would hunt like a bow hunter.
Oh yeah.
Because bow hunting, everything has to go right. You may see the deer, you may lay your eyes on them a few times before you even had the chance, or you may not have the chance. It's like rolling the dice. And if you bring a rifle with you, sooner or later, even with the bow, it's all going to come together. But your chances with the rifle are a little bit greater, especially if you're hunting like a bow hunter. So I've always said that, and there's no doubt. It's all about learning.
No question. All right, we're going to take a quick break right here. This podcast is brought to you by our buddies from Phoenix Lighting. They offer an array of lights for no matter what you are doing in the great outdoors, whether you're working on those late evening chores or walking to your deer stand. They have you covered. Go to the link in the description to check them out and use the Buckmasters, all capital letters, to get 10% off your order. All right, Case, let's talk about this hobby you got. I mean, I know you're a bow hunter. You're building your own bows. Now talk to me and the audience about how'd you get hooked into building your own bows?
So my baseball coach, he's always kind of, when we started talking, we realized we had a lot in common. He's super competitive and he loves to hunt, and he wants to see how far he can push his skill level. And he started making his own longbows off of YouTube. He just watched videos and started making them and listening, and he was so wanting to learn. And so he learned and started telling me about it, and he made his first bow and showed me, and he talked to me every morning at school about it, and he taught me into building one, and he showed me what he had learned and what he'd figured out. And I kind of took what he taught me, and I made my first one, and then we built many more, and each time we started making them better and better and better, and we'd study some more, and we'd learn more about it and what not to do. And we failed many a times failing, but you soon learn what not to do quickly, because it's so expensive to build one. Or not expensive, but it costs cost efficient to make it how it's going to work, and not try to do something different that you're not sure is going to work. And so we took what we learned and try to make a bow that we could build best, and that we know we could build, and just keep it simple. And that's what we did. And the bow that we started making it's a flat longbow. It's called a flat bow, and it's really nothing to it. It's really simple. It's the most modern style bow, and the average length of them are about 68 inches, depending on draw weight or whatever.
Mm-hmm. What kind of wood is it, Case?
So I made one out of oak, but the one I killed the deer with, I made it out of hickory. So I made a few. I made about 3 bows, and one ended up breaking on me, but I'll talk about that later when we get to the process.
Okay. Well, that's again. So now, do you go? You pick the type of wood you want. Then you go cut it, or do you go buy this from Home Depot or something? How does it start?
There's many ways you can do it. You can even cut a tree down and dry it out. You can't have any moisture in the wood, and it's got to be hardwood. So if you want to do it like that, and we've done it like that, you have to dry out the wood, and then you can plane it down into laminations. Everything's in little lamination strips. Or you can go to Home Depot and get your wood in a 2x4 or whatever, and cut it out like that. But we've done it all ways. Or you can go online, like Three Rivers Archery. They have bow building kits. Mm-hmm. And all you do is watch a video, and you can put it together yourself. But it just depends on how far you really want to take it. You want to have it already processed, or you want to process and do it yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So when you figure out which piece of wood you want, whether you go buy it or you go cut your tree down, what's your next step?
After you figure out what kind of wood you want, you got to have an idea of what style bow you want. So, say for instance, we're going to build a flat bow. We already know what kind of wood we want. We got to figure out how thick the laminations are and how heavy we want a bow at, say, 28-inch draw length or whatever your draw length is. So we got to figure out at 28 inches how thick it needs to be, say, 50 pounds. So what you do is there's a scale on there's a chart online, you can look it up, and it tells you the thickness of the bow and how long it goes off of length and how thick the limbs are and how heavy it's going to be around. It's not exactly, but it's close.
But that also tells you how much the poundage can be. Is that right?
Right. Yes, sir. So say it's at 28 inches, 55 pounds. At 27 inches, it may be 50 pounds. So it just depends. And so you figure out how heavy you want it, and you go from there and kind of base off how thick the bow is on your poundage or how much poundage you want off the thickness. And so you lay out all your strips or whatever, and before you glue it up, you measure each piece and you just calculate it together.
Golly, that's amazing. Now, talk about your strings. Once you get the piece of wood made, is there a particular type of string you got to have to be able to complete it?
So once you pick your wood out or whatever, there's a certain epoxy heat. It's cured with heat. So you glue your lambs together, and you actually put a fiberglass backing on to protect it and make it stronger. And so you put your epoxy across the wood, all the laminations. It could be 5 laminations, it could be 3 laminations. Depends how thick it is. If it's all the same thickness, it doesn't matter how you get there. It just matters how thick it is, right? So it depends how many laminations you have, but you just glue them all together and you clamp them down. You can do it with the C clamp, or there's some forms that are used with air hose, and you put air in the hose and it compresses it, and you stick it in a heat box and it cures it and hardens it, and you have your solid piece. And after you cure it or whatever, you cut it out, you cut the glue off or whatever, and you start sanding and shaping your bow. And you cut out your rest or whatever and your handle, and you form it to your hand and however you like it. Then you cut out your nock at the top where you put your string, and first you want to make sure it's going to bow. That's what we call bow, is if it's going to shoot or work. So we don't want to waste too much time if we put a string on and it breaks, right? So that's really the first step. You cut after you glue it together and cut it out. You want the cut out of it, but you don't want to make it pretty yet. You cut out your notch or whatever, and you put a string on it. If it strings, you're good, and then you draw it back and just hold your breath, making sure nothing cracks or pops. And then you have yourself a bow, and then you go from there and you make it pretty and however you want it. Start adding things to it to make it how you like it.
I got you. How much poundage do you like on your bow when you're making yours?
So when I started out, I was in 9th grade. I've been building them for probably 3 years now. Yeah, right at 3. And the summer going to 10th grade, let's say that. And at the time, I wasn't quite strong enough to pull back my bow correctly. I couldn't pull it back and get to my anchor consistently every shot. After 3 shots, I was tired. I was done. And with age, I started growing into it or whatever and getting stronger and stuff. And I really like around that 50 mark. I feel like I can shoot it over and over and over without getting fatigued as fast, and I can get to my anchor, and it's just enough to kill a deer, and it's not too much. Once you start getting above that, it gets pretty stiff and stout. And I'm more of a shooter guy, so I like to shoot a lot, and I want to be able to shoot because it makes me confident, right? And it's one of those things you got to do all the time and shoot to build your confidence. So when you're out there in the woods, you're confident enough to make a shot. And I make my bows a little lighter just so I can shoot more often.
All right, so are you using a tab? Are you using a finger glove? What do you use?
I'm using a tab, and matter of fact, I made this tab. This tab right here is just 2 pieces of leather with the extra piece right here that goes on where your palm is, and the string goes through it, goes around your finger. But I actually lost my tab the same week uh, they're so easy to lose. Putting them in your pocket
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff out of the stand. And I actually lost my tab, and I was kind of freaking out. And a guy in town, I knew he did a lot of leather work, and I sat down with him and I looked up how to make a tab, and it gave me all the right links and dimensions and everything else, and we got our dimensions and started cutting out the leather and sewed it up, and
Let me
I
see that.
shot
Bring
it.
that up a little bit higher. Let me see that thing, okay?
Shot it. Hold on.
Yeah, there you go, right there. That's in the center. Okay, so.
So it's two pieces right there, right?
Gotcha.
One's a little longer than the other, and then this is your piece that holds it all really together.
Uh-huh.
This is base, I guess you could say, and then on the back side is where your finger slides through. So
Yeah.
he just holds on to it or whatever, because then your sheet I'll pull through or whatever.
Are you using your anchor on your side of your mouth right there?
I use it right here in my mouth,
Right.
and I just pull through like there's an apple on my shoulder,
Uh-huh.
like I'm grabbing an apple. And it's a lot of form to do with it, but I don't have the best form. But it's not bad, but it's not the best, right? It's not pro or anything. It's just good enough and consistent enough to be able to put it in the kill zone of an animal.
All right, so talk to me about length of shot. What are you confident with?
So these bows, they shoot so slow, and I don't know the exact foot per second that one is, but it's pretty slow. So it's easy for a deer to duck or dodge the arrow. So, and it's so soft shooting, it kind of hangs, and
Right.
a lot can go wrong with it. So for me, I say 22 yards and in. And the only reason I say 22 is when I shoot in the yard, that's right before I feel the arrow falling off, like fast. It starts falling pretty fast. So, if I can get them 15, that's perfect.
Right.
15, 16, right in there. To me, that's money. You
Yep.
don't want them too close because of the angle, right?
That's
and it's
right.
hard. And I messed up last year, and I had a deer, a really good deer, right after I killed that one come in. He was a little too close, and the angle was too steep, and I couldn't get to my anchor because my string was hitting my leg, and he ended up making it out of there. So I'd say 15, 16 I'm really comfortable at.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing the deer's going to do is he's going to move, he's going to duck, and
So
you've got to anticipate that.
That's right. That's exactly right. I always try, if I miss, I want to miss slow.
Yeah, and you're always trying to aim at the lower 1/3, so if he does duck into it, you got money right there. But see, that's the thing about it is that you know what you're confident at, and you practice it and got your routine. I'm the same way, even with a compound. I don't like to shoot further than 30. Now, my bow will shoot 60 or 70 yards, but personally, I like to shoot at 30 yards, and I got a 2-pin set up. So it's all about practicing and routine, even if you're using a longbow. Now, let's talk about your arrows and your broadheads. Are you making your own arrows?
I have not got there yet, but I'm going there next. This year, I saved a few turkey feathers, turkey wings off turkeys I killed. I'm gonna make my own fletchings and off of a wooden shaft.
Yep.
This is actually a carbon shaft, and it's 500 spine, but I was shooting a 225 double bevel Z-Wiki on the front of this.
Cut on contact.
A lot of deer killed with these.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
I just kept my arrow kind of, simple. I didn't want to do too much, and I want to start it out with a carbon shaft just until I figured it out, right? I wanted to get a few deer under my belt before I try to get too advanced.
I agree. And hey, you owe that to the animals. Now, are you using, what are your fletchings? They're feather?
They're feather, but they're dyed feather. They're just your standard. If you buy these at your local store, whatever, they'll come just like, I didn't change it up.
Those about 4 inches?
Probably 3.5.
3.5,
I think
okay.
3.5, yes, sir.
I got you. Okay.
3 fletched, right helical.
All right. So then now you got everything set up now. So your next move is to build your own arrows. I had folks that built their own arrows. They did their own broadheads. I mean, they went way back in time, But you're right. That 20-yard and in is money.
Money.
All right. Let's talk about the big deer you shot. So you've got this deer. Did you spot him? Trail cameras. Go through what it took for you to get this deer. Great buck too.
I spent a lot of time in the woods, right? So last hunting season, I kept seeing this deer a lot. My dad, my brother, they'd see him or whatever, and he was real, you could just see him. He was just everywhere. So we're like, that deer's going to be something. He's going to be good. He's young. And this year I got him on camera, and he was on camera all the time. And I had the goal to kill a deer at the Longbow, and I said that'd be a perfect deer to kill at the Longbow, because it wasn't quite the caliber of deer I'd take with my compound.
Mm-hmm.
But any deer at the Longbow, or any deer period, I always say you can't eat the horns, but I just so happen to grow up where I have to hunt and manage deer by horns or whatever, so I can stay out of trouble, right? So,
yeah.
I got the green light on any deer, like that I wanted to harvest, and I got him on camera, and he started being present more often, and I figured out where he was and where he was living.
Were you getting your pictures when? September? Or were they in velvet? Did you start him early?
Had him in velvet, had him in October, and in rut every year. Inside the levee, they have bar pits, and what a bar pit is where they dig out the dirt to build the levee.
All right.
So it's a lot of low areas, and they grow up and they get real thick, and it becomes a deer bed. And in rut, all those does seem to go in there, and there's a lot of acorn trees, and so acorns this year were insane. It was a dry year, and there wasn't much water, and the deer were just everywhere in there. And every year, a bunch of bucks get in there, and I knew he was in there from camera pictures or whatever, and that's where he was living during that time of rut. And so I put a camera in there, and I started getting pictures of them. I decided to make a move and go in there and try to kill them, and it took me some time. But the first hunt, I got one in there on December 19th, and I hunted, and I look up, and I see a deer walking the little drainage ditch, and I see horns. I'm like, goodness, it's like a dream. It's like watching that deer you're hunting just come up. You know the feeling. It's like, no way. Like, this is just too good to be true. And he walks in the woods or whatever, and he's grunting, and there's a doe in there, and he's acting up, and here he comes. And my winds, I realized I didn't know he would come from there, because there's a gravel road right there that gets traveled pretty hard, and I didn't think he was going to cross I didn't think he was on the other side that day. Mm-hmm. But in rut, they go anywhere, of course. And here he comes, and my wind's blowing right to him. It was a northeast wind and northwest wind, and he comes southwest of me, and next thing I know, he stops, and I'm like, crap. Like, I know where this is going. Mm-hmm. He pauses, and he starts stomping. He can't pick me out. He doesn't know what it is. He just knows something's not right.
Right.
And he blows. He sits there and he blows. I'm like, man, come on. Like, you know the feeling. It's just frustrating. And he finally just keeps on walking, and he skirts right in front of me, heading north about 30 yards. And right at dark, I saw him again, and he was with two different does. He was actually bumping some younger does, mm-hmm. and there were deer all around me. And I waited to slap dark to get down. I get down, I go in the next day, and the 21st, and I see him again, and he comes in. I'm thinking he's about to do it this time, and he starts walking figure eights, eating under a tree. He's on an old doe trail. A hot doe had been through there, and he's just walking circles, trying to figure out. He can't pick up where she's been. He's just walking figure eights. No mm-hmm. kidding. There's video of it. I've videoed this.
Really?
Yes, sir. And he's walking figure eights, and he's right there at 25 yards. The closer he's getting 25, then he'd be at 50, then he'd be at 60, and then he'd be back at 30, 25. He just figure eights, in and out. Finally, he breaks away, and he goes west of me, behind me, to the other side of the little strip, and he walks north where the big woods are. So I'm like, man, should I move trees? He's walked by this tree like 2 days in a row now. Do I need to make a quick move? He's in here now. Is it time for me to make a move and adjust? And so December 21st, 22nd, I had a family Christmas thing to go to, and I missed that afternoon. But that morning, I got a picture of him right there. The camera wasn't 17 yards from my tree, and he was right there walking through. I'm like, man, and it was late morning. It was probably 10:30. And I knew he'd be back that afternoon because every time he came midday, he was going to be there late coming back through. And I couldn't make it. And sure enough, I got a picture of him. I said, well, I'm going to be in there early tomorrow. I'm going to sit this one out. So December 22nd, I got in there about 11, and I was going to sit it out. And 11:30, he hadn't been through there. And every time he hadn't been through there midday, he was on it. It was like clockwise. It was time.
Yep.
And I slipped in there, and deer. It's just one of those days. The deer were just moving. They were moving good. The barometric pressure was high. Everything was going good. And I look up, and there's a new deer in there, and he was pretty stout. And he's with. When I mean stout, he was older. He's just a warrior. Not much to his frame or whatever, but he was a warrior, an old deer, and he just acting old. Big 6 point, and he I thought he was gonna come on in, but those two younger does, he was bumping around, and they would run across the ditch. He'd follow them or whatever, and then here comes a freakish 3 point. One of those deer that have those big beam spikes on one side and then a fork on the other. And I'm like, well, if he comes in, I'm just trying to kill a deer. I just want to harvest a deer. I've seen all these deer, but I kind of, in my heart, I want this one deer. Time goes on, and deer are moving everywhere. And I look back to the north of me, and this deer hadn't came from the north all week. And right there at 20 yards in the little cane thicket to my left, I hear a grunt. And I look down, and it's him, and he's watching these deer chase these does. And I'm like, oh my, this no way. And he walks out, and he's kind of observing everything. Like, he knows something hadn't been right in the past, and he's close to it, and now he's seeing all these deer in there, and he's getting comfortable, and I'm letting him get comfortable. I'm not moving, sitting real still. I got so many deer around me, and I'm caught without my bow, so I'm like, I'm just gonna let everything settle down or whatever and let it play out. And I moved the camera, and he walks out, and he stays there for probably 30 minutes watching everything. About 35 minutes go by, and he's chasing the doe now. He's with the other doe. 2 bucks on one doe, and he comes running under me, but he won't stop or whatever, and it starts getting dark at this time, and he gets behind a tree, and at this point, he's at 18 yards. He's coming in. He's making the move. And I'm like, I'm going to draw back with his head behind the tree. And at 17, when he takes another step, he'll be about 17 yards. And I'm going to give him a try. And at this time, I wasn't nervous or worked up. I've been watching him so long. All in my mind I had was, let's kill. And so, I was calm or whatever. And I was going through everything in my head, and I draw back. And I had my grunt call in my chest pocket. I go to draw back, and the grunt call falls and hits the ground. And he jumps. I'm like, come on, man. Come on, Case. Like, you had him where you want him. You had this deer what you want. And you're going to make a rookie mistake like that. So, everything settles back down. About 10 minutes later, he comes back walking very slowly. It's low light now, but it's still shooting light. But when I mean it's still shooting light, it's 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
He comes in, and he's at an angle. I'm like, if I can just slip this arrow in his front, I will find this deer. And I'm all about making an ethical shot. And so I draw back, got to my anchor, and I felt really confident, and I let it go. And when I let it go or whatever, I saw him jump. He just, hunched up, and I'm like, did I hit him? I couldn't see my arrow, and it just shot so soft. And when it went in him, it doesn't make like a compound. It doesn't make that loud slapping sound, if you know what I mean. It's real soft, real soft. And I thought I heard some crashing. And so first thing I do, and I normally don't do this, but I felt confident, and I normally stay quiet or whatever, but I called my dad. My dad was out of town, and my brother's the one that had dropped me off. And I called him, I was like, just had my chance or whatever. And, I let one fly, and I feel good. I thought I heard him crash, but, I'm not 100% sure. It sounded like my arrow hit the leaves, but it was his foot just kicking. I was telling him, and I gave it some time or whatever, sat in my tree, and my brother finally showed up, and I got down with the flashlight, and I didn't see my arrow. I'm like, good. So I walk up on top of the ridge, and I heard crashing. So, me just being anxious, I go to where I think I heard the crashing, and I see his eyes. He's laying flat on the side, and I see his eyes glowing. One eye, and I see my arrow sticking up out of him. I'm like, no way. Like it's just a dream, like everything. I'm like, no way. I walk up to him, I lay my hands on him or whatever. First thing I did was call him back. I called my coach. I let him know I'd done it, because he knew I'd been trying really hard. And it was just the best feeling.
Oh, yeah. Well, what a great story, man. I mean, now, what did that deer score?
He was in the... I haven't scored him dried down, but he's in the low 20s.
That's great. That's awesome.
Which for a longbow is pretty stout. Always, Pope and Young, a lot of people really don't care for that stuff around here, but, I'm interested in stuff like that, and especially with the compound. And Pope and Young with the bow is great. And at times I always say Pope and Young, I wish there was a category for, like, traditional archery, Pope and Young, just a little bit shorter, maybe 10 inches or so.
Well, and maybe we can get you in the BTR, because the BTR might put him in the book right there. So I think it's 104 inches, because we don't use the spread. So we need to get a scorer over there and get him scored up for you.
Me too.
Well, you know what, Case, that's a great story. The thing is, at 17 years old, you impressed me as a hunter at 17, because you just made one tip right there that it took me a long time to figure out. And I'm here in Alabama. Deer look up. Any movement that you do, those deer look up. And you said you want to let that deer go behind that tree. So I always said, if you can see the eye of a whitetail, they can see you. And you were going to draw your bow back when that deer went behind that tree. That's a great tip to share with somebody. And somebody at 17 knowing that, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Absolutely. And the thought of a young hunter is always, everyone's been there that's hunted. It's the thought of, do I need to move? The thought of, and sometimes you do. I'm not saying that, but staying persistent and knowing a deer is in one area and he's been through there, persistence won that one, and persistence wins a lot of hunts.
Sure it does.
And, I feel like that was the big thing, and that's the biggest thing I did, was not moving. Although he'd been by that tree twice, he'd been in front of that camera more than he'd been by that tree. It just so happened every time I was there, he's by that tree.
Yeah. Well,
wind,
you got to check that wind. The wind is very critical. You did good on that. But here's the deal. You not only shot a deer, you shot a deer with a bow that you made. Now, how cool is that? Now, a lot of people can say they shot a deer with a bow, but how many people can say they shot a deer with a bow they made?
Exactly right. And when I made the bow or whatever, I didn't make it to say that or whatever. I made it just to see if I could do it. I've always been that guy. I want to see. I love a challenge, and I seriously wanted to see how young I could do it at.
Well, and, you're the youngest one I know of. I can tell you that. But I can promise you this: your athletics. Okay, that's where you're getting your competition from. There's nobody more competitive to me. And when I picked up whitetail hunting, I just went hunting. I didn't have the basics down, like my other sports. I just went, and I went, and I went, and I went until somebody watched me walk through the woods, and they wouldn't pick their stands out till they figured out the wind. I had no clue. I was putting time in, but I wasn't doing my basics right. So your athletics is helping you with your persistency and your discipline. And you're just 17. I see a huge career. I even see a career where you can take my job, I can sleep in, I don't have to do TV anymore. So
I have big dreams as a kid, and most kids do, but ever since I was little, I've always wanted to not necessarily have my own hunting show, but I wanted to either be on it, co-host, something like that. Always wanted that, and the past few years it's been a dream, and I've started to social media is big nowadays, and the route of what route I need to take to get there is the big question. But there's no doubt that has always been a goal of mine, and I'm still trying to figure that one out. And if it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Absolutely. You're still young, got plenty of time, and like I said, we'd love to talk with you. Like I said, I've been doing this thing for 38 years now, and I'm not going to be doing it forever. But folks like you that are competitive and building your own bow, shooting your own deer, you could be the next buckmaster out there. So, hey, thanks for taking time. What an awesome story. And I hope folks listening to today's podcast can say, hey, you can build your own bow, just like Case did, and you can shoot your own deer. How about that?
That's right. There's a funny story behind that deer, though, and I'd like to mention it.
All right.
My truck was in the shop. Not my truck. The truck my dad lets me drive.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that. And I was in one of the farm trucks, and it was dirty and stuff, and I wanted to clean it up a little bit, so I took it to the local car wash, and I vacuumed out. When I vacuumed out, I left my pair of Swarovski binoculars at the vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
I left them. And when I realized I left them, I knew I didn't have that kind of money in my piggy bank. So I went to a local outdoor store, and they had a pair of Sig Sauer Buckmaster Edition binoculars.
There you go.
And I looked through them. I'm like, man, for the money, these are clear. These are good.
Yeah.
That's all I need, especially bow hunting. You don't need to see a long ways.
No.
So I put them in my binocular pouch, and they were in my binocular pouch when I killed that deer. So that's pretty cool.
How about that? Sig Sauer Buckmasters. Case got him with the Sig Sauer. How about that? All right, my friend. Well, look, thanks for taking time. What a great story you got. Stay in touch with us. We need to get one of our BTR scores over there and score that thing. You might make our record book, but you're going to have plenty of deer. But great story. Tell everybody over that way I said hello. You got it?
Will do. I hope to meet you in person.
Absolutely, we'll do it. All right, folks, another Buckmasters Outdoors podcast. Case Chacon out of Cleveland, Mississippi. Y'all stay tuned. We got a lot more podcasts coming up.